I inspire. I inspire dry fear. This is Steve Shives. This is Richard Carrier. This is Rebecca Watson. This is Aaron Ra. This is A.B. Roth. This is Matt Dillahunty. And this is P.Z. Myers. What do these people have in common? I will give you a minute. Well, not a minute. I'll give it... They're skeptics. They not only identify as skeptics, but they wear the label on their sleeves. They attend conventions specifically geared around skepticism. Like Skepticon, the Amazing Meeting, that sort of thing. They make it their main pursuit, or even their career, and they've been doing it for at least the best part of a decade. They are skeptics who commune with other skeptics to talk about things they don't accept or believe. Which isn't really my bag, to be honest. I'd rather talk about things I like and want to create more of. Like music and cartoons and human rights. Hence, I am a musician, a cartoonist, and a human rights advocate. And I go to various conventions that are about those things. I mean, you could call me a skeptic, as and when the shoe fits. I'm skeptical of conspiracy theories and pseudoscience, and especially skeptical of rhetorical sleight of hand. And I do talk about those things. But I certainly don't name myself after those things. And I wouldn't recommend doing so to anyone else. I treat activism and identity like evolution treats genomes. You can't just rip out the wires of the outdated technology. You have to build something on top of it and rewire it. It's also a little bit like sport. You define yourself by the team you support, not the team you don't. Despite rivalries, despite major rivalries. I mean, Rangers fans and Celtic fans hate each other, but they don't call themselves Celtic haters and Rangers haters. They call themselves Rangers fans and Celtic fans. Even warring football hooligans understand that naming yourself after what you oppose is not a very, sporting thing to do. Or a very effective thing to do, if your aim is to consolidate. That might be why atheists don't really have a functional community. The clue is in the name. It has a prefix A. If you define yourselves by what you don't believe, and you go to a place where no one believes that thing, then you're defining yourself by a thing that is of no consequence in that place. It's fucking retarded. So you find yourself gravitating towards people you do have something in common with, such as games, or comics, or feminism. I mean, if you go to an atheist convention to meet new people, what do? You're an atheist? Me too. Nice. Bye. You're an atheist? Me too. Good talk. You're an atheist? Me too. Cool story, bro. But wait, you're an atheist and you like gaming? Me too. Let's go to a gaming convention and have a much better time. And they toddle off together and they don't come back to the atheist convention. But of course, it's different with feminists. They meet people at conventions and go, "You're an atheist and a feminist, you say? Let's fuck this place up." I mean, I'm afraid. Aren't you afraid too? Then everyone else should be afraid as well. That's how they operate, because they're terrorists. What did I just describe? Using weaponized fear to hold institutions hostage until they meet your demands. They're terrorists. They can get away with it because they have power. Unchecked power. And the same shit happens with sand feminists, by the way. And lest I be accused of merely vacuously name-calling, I should explain what I mean by that. See, feminists worship the female victims over here. Sand feminists worship the female victims over there. Same tactics, same shut the fuck up, this is about me bullshit. They'll fuck up your convention in similar ways. They just have a different locus of control. It's more externalized. Even more externalized. It's you're an Islam apologist rather than just you're a rape apologist. They came up with a name to call me, so I came up with a name to call them. Sand feminists. It's a stalemate now. However much they may croon that it is not. Do try and remember how that works for future reference. You see, when you create an atheist convention, you create an ism vacuum. And it will eventually be filled by the most potent, most pervasive, most ruthless isms in the vicinity. Maybe that's why atheists and skeptics don't have a functional community, because it keeps getting taken over by feminist terrorists. Like the feminists I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Is that what killed the skeptic community? Well, no. Apparently not. Hop, skip, jump. This is Alexander Kolbakov. He is definitely a skeptic. He was the proprietor of the group known as the Skeptic Feminists. He wore the label not just on his sleeve, but in his name. In May of this year, 2017, he murdered his girlfriend in cold blood, i.e. what is now determined to be the first degree. Bear in mind, Elliot Rodger had never even heard of the men's rights movement, according to any available evidence, and yet let's all blame the men's rights movement for him. Meanwhile, a dude whose chosen name is the Skeptic Feminist murders someone. And what do? We blame it on magic mushrooms he has never been confirmed to have taken, and we blame it on PTSD from military combat that it has been confirmed he has not seen. And then we go to work, getting outraged at anyone who dares to make a connection between this murderer and the ideology he called himself. We take military veterans, shroom-eating hippies, and non-feminists, and we throw them all under the bus, rather than so much as think of blaming feminists or skeptics for the actions of the skeptic feminists. Is that what killed the skeptic community? Surely it is. That must be. What offended people's sensibilities enough for them to denounce the skeptic community? Right? The murderer guy. Well, no. Apparently not. It's not as though we talked about doxing someone on Discord. All he did was murder someone. I mean, it was certainly it's rather a scary time. It's not every day you realise you've been face to face, or, you know, at least voice to voice, and at odds with a person who's capable of first degree murder on any amount of theoretical drugs. So it was a very chilling thought that went through the minds of anyone whom these skeptic feminists had ever targeted. Some of us got through those chilling thoughts by just making a scared face and backing away slowly towards the drinks cabinet. And some of us got through it by cracking some jokes. Those jokes are indeed what caused some people to, quote-unquote, leave the skeptic community. It wasn't because of the card-carrying skeptic who just murdered someone. No, again, that sort of thing is comfortably within the pale. No, it's the people reporting on that news story in an unacceptable tone. That's What's embarrassing about the skeptic community? Not the murderer guy. No one has ever even made a connection between Kolpakov's actions and the skeptic part of his name. Oh, except this guy. This is Dean Esme. He's definitely not a skeptic. As a matter of fact, he's very much a pioneer of the not a skeptic community. He once had an argument in a somewhat legendary online hangout with a famous anthropologist. Sorry. YouTube anthropologist. I didn't see that particular hangout. Drama's not really my thing. But I can only assume from what's happened since that Dean here not only whooped the guy's ass, but blew his mind in the process, because that famous YouTube anthropologist has since converted to the non-skeptic community and become quite a figurehead of it. Dean might be crazy, man. Really fucking crazy, but dang, you gotta give it to him. He really puts things in the water. Was that what killed the skeptic community? Well, it's a difficult question to answer because it depends on who's asking it. And more importantly, who they're talking about when they say the skeptic community. I mean, whenever you hear, normies talking shit about MRAs, for instance, you ask them for examples of who they're talking about when they say the MRA, sick. And as examples, they're quite likely to mention someone who's never heard of the men's rights movement, like Elliot Rodger, or someone who actively rejects it, like Ruth V. At that point, it becomes clear that this person is not even trying. They're simply taking the label that has the worst reputation in their eyes and matching it up with whichever human has the worst reputation in their eyes. Even if they don't apply at all. Because drama. Because some people just want to get outraged by the smallest possible amount of information. Because they're dysfunctional. And they want to live in dysfunction. So they go, let's connect an identity I don't like to a person I don't like, and way, I called someone a name. And now I get to be outraged at them. Because of my actions towards them, yes. And a similar thing goes on when you ask someone who they mean when they say the skeptic community. I think I answered it pretty well earlier on. There are annual conventions going on, skeptic-based conventions with thousands of attendees and with recurring VIPs, such as some of the examples I gave you. But you'd be surprised how many folks, when they say the skeptic community, do not for a moment think of such people. They don't even think of James Randi or Michael Shermer. They think of a list more like this. This person has been chosen at random, but is generally what you can expect from an average member of the not a skeptic community. Is there anyone else in the not a skeptic community who'd like to give me their list to see if it's significantly different from this person's list? Oh, wait, I can point at anyone and declare them part of the not a skeptic community, according to the logic of the not a skeptic community. But this person's just an outlier, just a random kook on Twitter. They don't represent me. You have eliminated that option. Zip it. But this particular member of the community was nice enough to give me a list far more exhaustive than one would usually expect. You'll usually only get 2 or 3 examples of who represents the skeptic community, and it'll be 3 individuals with only one thing in common. I mean, apart from the person selecting them doesn't like them, obviously. But they have one political thing in common. The people on this list have that one thing in common. Can you spot what it is? There are lefties in there are righties in there are atheists in there are religious people in there. Some of them are comedians, some of them are researchers, some of them are presenters, some of them are entertainers, and so on. The only thing I can think of that everyone on that list has in common, funnily enough, is something none of them have in common with that list I gave at the beginning. Everyone on my list there was a feminist / social justice, progressivist, whatever. Everyone on your list is not. Everyone on your list is explicitly and publicly against that sort of thing. What have we got? We got Sargon, we got TJ, we got Tilde. We got Black Pigeon, Bearing, Roaming, Logic, Armored Skeptic, Kraut, Undoomed, Humble Opinions, Crowder, Watson, Peterson, and Alex Jones. This is who is in the skeptic community. According to the not a skeptic community. Only 2 of these people, Sargon and Armed Skeptic, have ever featured at a skeptic-based event, and only once, less than 3 months ago. The rest of them are various barely connected people who criticize a variety of things online, including but not limited to social justice, progressivism. That's the only thing they have in common in terms of things you might be skeptical about. And have you asked any of them if they consider themselves part of the skeptic community? Because there's quite a lot of them, if not all of them, will probably say no. I know what you're fucking doing there. Fucking Teal'dir's in there. Teal'dir. Is there any smack you can talk about the skeptic community that Teal'dir himself hasn't already called out fucking years ago? I hope Teal'dir is putting his feet up right now and sipping a tall, frothy mug of I told you so. Because he fucking did. And holy shit, Harmful Opinions is in there. In this list of examples of members of the skeptic community. Sorry, mate, I know you made it as clear as you possibly could that you're, not in anyone's club, and I don't blame you. But it's a nope, I'm afraid. Them's the breaks. Anyone can be called part of the skeptic community. Anyone. You can even say, I am not a skeptic and I want nothing to do with this community until you're blue in the face and on fire. It means nothing. You're still guilty. You're still collectively culpable, according to anyone who says so. I mean, the only way out of it is to publicly declare I am not a skeptic and be popular enough on YouTube to have developed a sufficient buffer zone of useful idiots who will obsequiously listen and believe that you are always right. And then you've won yourself a banana republic of not-a-skeptics, which in no way resembles a community. Congratulations. And it's a community, by the way, that will support you if anything goes wrong with your channel. Maybe that's what a community is, eh? Mutual support. Am I still talking about Tim? So, as I have already called it, I'm pretty sure I did a mini rant about this once in the middle of a video. Anyone who is mourning or rejoicing at the death of the skeptic community, or at their exit from it, or their entrance into it, is doing nothing but throwing shade at shadows. There is no such thing as the skeptic community. God knows how many amounts of skeptic communities there could be. As we've established, there is a community for skeptic feminists, and there is a separate community for skeptic non-feminists, depending on who's talking about the skeptic community. And the skeptic non-feminists, by the way, happen to have found themselves in the firing line. At this point in history, people are simply using the phrase skeptic community as a derogatory term for a very loosely connected series of individuals who oppose social justice, progressivism, and feminism, among other things. I'm sorry to say this, but anti-SJWs, or whatever you want to call yourselves, that's kind of the point, in their attempts to conglomerate as a shared interest group, have accidentally walked right into an elephant trap here. Because they don't know what to call themselves. They made the decision some time ago that men's rights advocate does not describe them, and they sure as fuck don't want to go with white something something. That's fully off the cards now, as far as PR goes. So, the anti-SJWs, the anti-feminists, yeah, they've left themselves without an option of a label that describes what they're defending, because those are the things being attacked, whiteness and maleness. If those aren't options for your identity, then all you have left is to name yourself after what you're opposing. You're a non-feminist, you're an anti-SJW, you're an atheist, you're a skeptic. And free speech advocate isn't going to work either, by the way. Everyone can claim they believe in free speech. They can claim it and then add some small print. Free speech is just another virtue signal at the end of the day. Until you've proven your words by your actions. If you have enemies, maybe you should call yourself something your enemies will not, better yet, cannot call themselves. Call yourself something positive that they cannot abide. Not just anti whatever they are. As I said, you cannot sustainably create a community out of nothing but an opposition to a particular ism. Because you'll just get an ism vacuum. If you try to create an anti-feminist community, it will be filled in by any and all ideologies except feminism. So it'll be filled on one side by leftist non-feminists and on the other side by rightist non-feminists until they have a big old clash in the middle like they are at the moment. Also, the sand feminists will infiltrate your system if you neglect to recognize that they are another kind of feminist. And if you try to create a skeptic community, it will be filled by, well, anything. Anything skeptical of anything else. So it'll be filled by the most potent and ruthless philosophies that can grow in that system. So it'll be filled on one side by the virtue signalers of the social justice community, who dismiss their questioners by calling them bigots. And it'll be filled on the other side by the woke hipsters of the great double negative in the sky that is the not a skeptic community, who dismiss their questioners by calling them skeptics. Which is another word for questioners. They are fascinating creatures to watch. They really are. More good has come out of this than bad. Nothing's been torn apart. Skepticism has not died. Anti-feminism has not died. And no words have died just because they've been memed with the word community. We're all still here. Still talking about current events like we always did. And our audiences are still growing. Some of us. But now, on top of that, we now have the privilege of being able to observe a brand new species of mindless shitheel that we can study and make fun of. The fundamentalist woke hipster. The I'm not a skeptic, I'm skeptical of skeptics derp community. You thought feminists were bad. You thought religious fundamentalists were bad. These people think it's an insult to call you a questioner. Just a general questioner. That's what skeptic actually means. Yeah, SJWs will insult you by calling you Hitler. Anti-SJWs will insult you by calling you Stalin. But the not a skeptic community will insult you by essentially calling you Socrates. That's the kind of thing they find the most insulting. Not interested in the murderers, again. It's just those pesky skeptics. Especially if you put a TM after it. Because then it's different. That sorts it all out, you see. So we see, when I call you skeptic TM, that means you label yourself a skeptic, even though you're not doing skepticism properly. Like I do. As I can only have determined using skepticism. I mean, you don't label yourself a skeptic at all, but that doesn't matter. I've eliminated that option, remember? I'm calling you someone who calls themselves a skeptic. And that means you're an idiot. Because you'd have to be an idiot to call something a skeptic, when according to someone else's skepticism, it is not. Obviously, none of them have thought it through that far. There's nothing at the end of the tunnel but a cunt-shaped paradox, but none of them have reached it. And they never will, because whenever they're in trouble, they just yell, "Triggered!" and post a Shrek meme. You know, to indicate to you that you've upset them and they'd like you to stop. One thing the members of the Not a Skeptic community have in common is projection. When they get triggered, they call you triggered. When they get butt hurt, they call the person who hurt their butt hurt. They will try to kill words, like MRA or Skeptic. Straight up, they will actually aim to remove pieces of language from our vocabulary. And then we'll turn around and call you the language police. Because you drink a shot every time they mention autism. Because the idea of anyone laughing and joking at what they say is strictly verboten. And what's more, they target people. They make it their mission to target people. They may even become YouTube famous for the way they target people. And then they lose their shit when they see someone else who has a folder on their desktop full of people they've made videos about. I mean, people they want to fucking murder and burn their bodies. Woo, lad. Such is the prerogative of the Not a Skeptic community. I'm not a skeptic. Shit just is what I say it is. Because I'm always right. Sorry, I mean, YouTube right. Y'all thought the political compass was two-dimensional, didn't you? With just an x-axis and a y-axis. If only it were that simple. It's 3 dimensions, at least. The first dimension represents authoritarians to libertarians. The second dimension represents left-wingers to right-wingers. And the third represents virtue signalers to woke hipsters. And we've done a good job, folks, we really have, of recognizing and locating virtue signalers, what they do, how they do it, and where they are. But it's high time we recognized that there is such a thing as the opposite of virtue signaling. And it is just as dogmatic, just as pathological, and just as worthy of your ridicule. They are the woke hipsters. And you will know them by the names they call you. Just like virtue signalers, all they've really got at the end of the day are names that they call people, but they just have different sets of names. Just like the left will call you a Nazi, the right will call you a commie, the virtue signalers will call you a bigot, and the woke hipsters will call you a skeptic TM. And on the best of days, they are all full of shit. Virtue signalers and woke hipsters, however, have that added property that despite having names for everyone else, they don't have names for themselves. You'll never hear anyone confirm that, yes, I am a virtue signaler, or yes, I am a woke hipster. They use words to control people, and they have no interest in controlling themselves. So everyone has a name but them. And virtue signalers do it by claiming you don't care as much as they do. And woke hipsters do it by claiming you care more than they do. As if either of those claims constitutes information that is worth articulating or that anyone needs to know. Even if they are true, which they are not. Professing that you care does not prove that you care. Professing that you don't care proves that you do. Only your actions indicate how much you care. Grow the fuck up. You're not impressing anyone by lying about how much you care. And of course, the particular words they use to churn their drama will change with the seasons, as they always have. They'll change to whatever words imply these claims, these care judgments in the current year. Bigot will change to racist or sexist or in accordance with whoever the most protected group is. And Skeptic TM will change to, well, whatever identity they can pin on you. If you're a libertarian, they'll say, you're a libertarian, blah, 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 dismiss. If you're an egalitarian, they'll say, you call yourself an egalitarian, blah, 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 dismiss. But when in doubt, when they can't find anything you wear remotely close to your sleeve, they'll simply raise their woke-ass wizard hands and declare you part of the skeptic community. TM. Therefore, blah, 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 dismiss. Because virtue signalers and woke hipsters are, by their nature, identity politicians. They represent a person's tendency to step away from the other two dimensions of politics because they're far more concerned with dividing each other up based on words. Entirely on words and only on words. Words they've made up or words they've latched onto and disfigured horribly. And just like with the other two dimensions, there are extremists and there are moderates. Moderate woke hipstering takes the form of reasonable individualism. It's why we have artists and philosophers instead of just kings and holy books. And moderate virtue signaling takes the form of reasonable collectivism. It's why we have countries and cities instead of just isolated Stone Age villages. Anyone who understands the first thing about how humans work, and that we are a social species, knows that you'll tend not to have individualism or collectivism on its own. You have a little bit of both, right there in your genes. We can survive as individuals, we can, but we survive better and longer as families. To be moderate on the virtue signaler to woke hipster scale is to value, to a comparable degree, both individualism and collectivism. But the extremes are there too. Just like with the others. The extremes are the virtue signalers who try to reject individualism so much that they isolate themselves as individuals. And there are the woke hipsters who try to reject collectivism so much that they become a collective. With a Jesus and everything. A YouTube Jesus. Here to save us from the YouTube scientists. YouTube Jesus, please respond. This is how certain words and identities end up with extra baggage. Because of what virtue signalers and woke hipsters are playing at. The term YouTuber has woke hipster baggage all over it. The term MRA has well, both. More in the way of virtue signaler baggage. Way more than it could possibly own. But we've been slowly offloading it over the years, and we're still going strong. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, the term alt-right has taken on an unholy amount of virtue baggage, and autistic has taken on an unholy amount of hipster baggage. They both basically mean stop thinking, just listen and believe. And similarly, at the moment, the term skeptic community is being given infinitely more hipster baggage than it owns, and infinitely more virtue baggage than it owns, because it owns none of either. It's a ghost. It's a term for a thing that never needed a term. At this point, we're just making up identities and inserting them into words to justify arbitrary schisms that we've already decided to have. Because drama. Because drama between people just isn't as spicy as drama between identities. But this is not necessarily a bad sign, ladies and gentlemen. Not every bad thing is necessarily a bad sign. Perhaps this is just what happens when we try to exorcise identity politics from our dialogue. It goes kicking and screaming because we're addicted to it. But this is what it looks like when the beast is being tamed. is the worst elements holding out while the rest get better. For a minute there, I was worried that there would be people killing each other in the streets, chanting Nazi and commie and so on, while the virtue signalers and the woke hipsters egg them on from their computers. But it didn't get that bad. As a matter of fact, we've been reduced to having nothing to talk about but the dramatic death scene of a ghost community that none of us can even define who is and who is not part of. That is us running on fumes with regards to having identitarian shit to talk about. We're still addicted to the heroin of name-calling, but we're finding nothing in the house but aspirin. That's not the end of identity politics, but it might be one vibration cycle in its death rattle. One of many, however. They'll be back for more. They'll all be back for more. The next time you reject a popular narrative and try to call yourself something because of it. When you call yourself something, you walk right into the jaws of the name callers. So my advice, for what it's worth, is don't call yourself what you think. Because that can't be proved, but it can be professed. Don't even call yourself what you do, if you can help it. Just do things. Like running, like eating, like gardening, like engineering, like writing, like advocating. And when you meet people who will say to you, "What are you, an advocate?" Advocates are so cringe/butthurt/triggered in a childish attempt to make you disown your actions. Do not play their game. Own your actions. Own the verbs that apply to you most. But you are under no obligation to take responsibility for whatever chewed-up definition of a noun is in the imagination of some snot-nosed AIDS pig who just met you. Tell those non-binary transgender cry-bullies that you don't give a fuck about their pronouns. And tell the woke hipster not a skeptic chuckle fucks that you don't give a fuck about their nouns. You've got verbs to do. Salutations. Conjunction verb adjective. And in Shadowley. Remember to say that too, and praise Keck. They fucking hate that.